Vidur Neeti, translation of Vidur Neeti by Shree Anand Krishna. The word Vidur in Sanskrit carries the meaning of skilled, intelligent, and wise. Vidur, a unique character of the Mahabharata, portrays him as the half-brother of King Dhritarashtra and the minister of the fabled kingdom of Hastinapur. He was prominently known for his Nitis, ethics, truthfulness, unbiased judgment, dutifulness, and unfaltering faith to Dharma. Today, we will discuss few of his powerful advices in our fourth part of this series. Wicked and evil persons start believing that they are righteous and respectful if some of their deeds are praised by the righteous and the praiseworthy. It is the saints who help the mortals. It is the saints who help other saints. It is the saints who help the wicked. But the wicked never help the saints. A well-dressed person wins and establishes influence upon the crowd. A person who has a cow wins the desire of sweet taste. A person with a conveyance reaches his destination quickly. A person of cool temperament wins over everything. A person cannot achieve anything through riches and supporters if he loses his cool temperament. A rich man's diet is dominated by meat. A middle-class man's diet is dominated by milk. A poor man's diet is dominated by oil. A poor man always eats tasty food as his hunger always makes the food tasty. A rich man rarely eats tasty food as he rarely suffers from hunger. In this mortal world, rich persons generally don't have the capacity to eat and digest food. But in the stomach of a poor man, even wood can be digested. A lower class person fears from the loss of a livelihood. A middle class man fears from death. A upper class man's greatest fear is being dishonored and insulted. Though drinking wine is bad, but the intoxication of lust is most evil. Nothing can stop a lustful person from being mentally corrupted and losing his senses and control. Due to the senses not being in control, this mortal world that is immersed in the gratification of the senses suffers pain and sorrow in the same way as the planets are affected by the suns and the stars. A person who comes under the influence of the five senses that control every living being will suffer from increased moral degradation, just like the increasing effect of lunar eclipse on the moon. A king who tries to win over his ministers without first gaining control over his senses, or tries to win over the enemy without first controlling his ministers, is discarded and not respected by his subjects. A king who first gains victory over his senses and then tries to win over his ministers and the enemy always gains success. A king will always be served by the goddess of wealth if he does the following. A king who is always in control of his senses and mind. A king who can successfully punish the offenders and criminals. A king who undertakes every work after careful consideration of all the pros and cons. A person's body is like the chariot. His wisdom is the rider of the chariot, and his senses are the horses that pull the chariot. A person who can control the senses can peacefully travel using his wisdom to ride the chariot by controlling his senses by his wisdom. An untrained and uncontrolled horse will kill stupid rider. In the same way, the uncontrolled senses will destroy a man. A person who does not have control over his mortal senses cannot distinguish right from the wrong. and appropriate from the inappropriate, and will mistake a deep sorrow for joy. A person who loses the sense of his duty and purpose by indulging in sensual gratification soon loses his reputation, life, riches, and his wife. A wealthy person who does not gain control over his senses loses his reputation and strength and becomes morally corrupt. A person should try to discover his own soul and inner universe after gaining control over his mind, senses, intuition, and knowledge. Our graceful soul can be our true friend, and our sinful soul can be our real enemy. Two big fishes which are entangled in a fine net can eat away the net and free themselves. In a similar manner, lust and anger can eat away a man's wisdom and make it disappear. A person who gathers right resources and means for his victory through faithful performance of his duty with a rightful purpose will always remain happy and prosperous. If a person who cannot win over the inner enemy of five senses that can degrade his consciousness tries to conquer his enemies, he will certainly be defeated by his enemies. Because of lack of control over senses, big priests are tied to the mortal world, and the king is entangled in gratification of the mortal senses. An innocent person who mixes with criminals and sinful wicked persons gets the same punishment, just like a wet piece of wood also gets burned if it is mixed with dried wood that is put on fire. Therefore, an innocent person should never mix up with wicked persons and criminals. Sorrow and misery engulfs a person who, being controlled by mortal desires, does not control the enemy of his five mortal senses that entice him to indulge in sensual gratification. In the wicked soul's following qualities are never found: not finding fault in the righteous person, simplicity, purity, satisfaction and contentment, sweet speech, control over the senses, truthful speech, relaxed and cool temperament. In sinful persons, following qualities are never found: soul consciousness, peace and tranquility, patience and perseverance to bear harm, religiousness, upholding and keeping one's promises, habit of giving charity. Foolish persons abuse and criticize the wise and try to harm to the wise. A person who abuses another person becomes a party to such sin, and the person who forgives a sinful person is freed from such sin. The strength of a wicked person is violence. The strength of a king is his ability to punish offenders. The strength of a woman is in service to master. The strength of a talented person is in forgiveness. Complete control over speech is extremely difficult, but meaningful, important speech or magical speech can also not be spoken much. Any message in sweet words becomes highly beneficial to everyone in many ways, but if the same message is given in harsh words, then it can be the cause of great destruction. A forest destroyed by arrows and axe can revive and once again propagate, but the wound caused by harsh speech can never be healed. An arrow that has pierced a body can be removed, but the thorn of harsh speech and words cannot be taken out, as it pierces and destroys a man's heart. The arrow of harsh speech goes and hurts the consciousness of others, and the injured person is sorrowful day and night because of such harsh speech. Therefore, wise persons should never use harsh words to address other persons. The gods take away the good consciousness of a person they intend to defeat, and such a person starts concentrating on lowly acts leading to his destruction.